Let's see if I remember how to do this dedicated book review style of video. Hey everyone, welcome back to Andrew's Wizardly Reads, and today guys, we are doing a book review for Robert McCammon's Swan Song. But before we get into that, please do me a favor, like this video, subscribe to the channel, as it does help the channel grow, and you can check the description box down below for links to all my social media, including information about the book club / Patreon, which you can join for as little as $1 a month, and it helps support the channel, as well as a fantastic bookish community in the Wizardly Duo Discord. All those links, description box down below. With that out of the way, let's jump on into this book. This is not an official, DNF redemption style video like I used to do for books that I DNF'd, which should kind of clue you into where I'm at with Swan Song. I read book 1 of Swan Song because it's broken into 2 books, and then I DNF'd it for a reason that I don't fully remember. It's a very, very interesting style of story because this book was all the rage. What was it, like a year and a half to a year ago on BookTube? A lot of people were listing this as their book of the year, and that's not my experience with the book. However, I would arguably say it's a 4.5 out of 5. It's a solid book. I would give this a solid A rating, just to give you my rating right up front. This book is fantastic. However, this book has all of the trigger warnings. It's got SA, it's got death, killing, destruction. This is a post-apocalyptic thriller where basically society has been destroyed and all of our characters are kind of devolved down to their base human instincts. This is a fight for survival, and then we kind of add an additional layer of complexity of a very typical good versus evil style of story. It's very, very good. It's very compelling, but a lot of the scenes are very hard to read. We have people who are just very, very bad people. We've got fallen war heroes who are still dealing with the PTSD of being prisoners of wars, who then come into positions of power. We've got young boys who commit patricide and stuff like that. This is a nuclear fallout situation where people's minds have been broken, and it's only through a few individuals really holding on to hope that humanity is able to come out the other side. And it's a very, very interesting story. I would say between books 1 and book 2 is 2 distinct, different reading experiences. A lot more hard stuff to swallow in book 1. It's got a lot more of the trigger warnings and stuff like that. Some very brutal scenes. Scenes involving adults and children, and the children having to defend themselves against adults. Stuff that's really hard to read. And then there's just drugs and alcohol and substance abuse. All of that is captured within Swan Song. And yet, it's also got a little bit of a wholesome feel to it. Do with that information what you will. This book is a book of contradictions, and I can see why so many people like this. I've liked it enough to get a special edition of it. I went and splurged for the Suntap Press edition of Swan Song because Robert McCammon has become one of my new favorite authors, and this is a book that I will cherish in my collection for many, many, many years. But we've got multiple different kinds of characters here. We've, of course, got the titular Swan, who is a young girl who is caught in nuclear fallout and tries to survive. And she's got this affinity for helping plants grow. And basically, if she's got a green thumb. If she touches plants, they will sprout and they will flourish very, very quickly. And this is a skill that becomes very, very useful in a nuclear winter. We've got a shape-shifting evil character. One thing I do kind of want to note, and I saw this on a different review. I don't remember where I saw it. But basically it said that this is a fantasy novel masquerading as a post-apocalyptic thriller, which I can also kind of agree with. There's a lot of fantasy elements here. We've got the big bad dark lord type of deal, or the embodiment of evil. We've got this paragon of good. We've got a little bit of suspicious magic going on that's never really explored or explained. We've got a MacGuffin in this kind of glass ring that a character who was previously homeless and finds this glass ring. It helps heal her mind, and it helps her sort through her trauma. through various different means. Sister is a very compelling character, and we'll talk about characterization in just a couple seconds, because that's, I think, where this book particularly shines. But we've got MacGuffins, we've got the good, we've got the evil, we've got all of that in this book. And like I said, the book one is full of all of the trigger warnings. It's very rough to read, where this is immediately following post Fallout. The world is dying, the world is dead, the nukes have dropped. And it's rough to see what happens to these people. And as they try and survive and come together and form communities and form bands and hoard food and find other survivors and deal with wildlife, and then all of a sudden start dealing with mutations. And then we cut to book two, where the mutations have started taking effect. We've got these masks, they're called Job's masks, that are slowly like covering people's faces, and they can barely see and breathe, and these people are being ostracized, and civilization has kind of collapsed, and the maps no longer work. There's a 7-year time jump, and I think that's partially why I walked away, is my brain finished book one, and then I was just like, that's a good ending. And when I tried to start book two, it felt like I was reading a book two. It felt like I was reading a separate novel. This almost feels like a duology. And there was about a 6 or 7 month gap between my reading of book one and book two. I actually DNF'd the book, unhauled it for various reasons. I don't recall why. And then I came back to it because the book was calling to me. And I picked up this edition, and I picked up this special edition. And I have no regrets on that, because it's been an amazing reading experience. I think this book 100% sticks the landing. And it analyzes great character growth, essentially. I told you we were going to be coming back and talking about those characters. One of the things I think Swan Song does really well is evolution of character, or sturdiness of character. We've got some characters who don't change all that much from book one to book two. One of them being Josh. Josh is this kind of retired football player who's kind of traveling around to small wrestling shows. I think his wrestling name was like Dark Frankenstein or something like that. He had like a mangled face and stuff like that, and he finds himself being Swan's protector when the bombs drop. And getting to see the sturdiness of Josh's character, even though he doesn't think he's that strong of a character, was really compelling. And then there's Swan, who is just this core of goodness that is maintained throughout the entire story, to see that sturdiness of character. But then to see the growth of Sister. Sister and Paul are two people who found themselves very early on in nuclear fallout, and to see them grow together and become these not only supportive friends, their relationship stays platonic throughout the platonic throughout the entirety of their journey. But the way they reinforce each other, the way they believe in each other, there are some stumbles and there are some hiccups along the way. But by the end, like, that character arc was fascinating. We've got characters like Rusty, who enters in about halfway through the story. Rusty's a really compelling character, and I loved Rusty. And then we see the degradation of Roland and Colonel Macklin, who basically, they were in a mountain, kind of like doing a preppers sort of thing when the bombs dropped, and then they find that this mountain that they were in, that was supposed to be this preppers resort, may not have been as good of a resort as they thought. And to see the degradation of their characterization and at their descent into madness, and how they become codependent, but they also resent each other, it's just really compelling. And then you've got the chaos of it all with the man with the scarlet eye, who is this dark, evil entity who just walks around causing general chaos. He wants the world to end. He wants humanity to fall. He is here to basically bring around final destruction. It's his party, and he's going to do it his way. And from the moment we meet him in a movie theater to the very end of the story, he's just a very consistent character, but at the same time, like, he's like a car crash that you can't look away from. Like, you're just going to watch him. And it's really interesting. Now, one of the things I want to talk about is this book gets constantly compared to The Stand. I read The Stand first. And other than thematically being similar, they're both post-apocalyptic. One's, of course, nuclear fallout. The other one is rampant disease. But you've also got the additional layer of good versus evil. So yes, those elements do make these books similar. However, the stories are incredibly different. The characters are incredibly different. Mary's Rest is not like the same town that you find yourself in The Stand. And I just think that there's enough differences here that when people have said in comments like, hey, if you've read The Stand, you don't need to read Swan Song, I just fundamentally disagree. They are two separate, different reading experiences. However, they are similar thematically, but they are not copy and paste. And for that reason, I do recommend people check out Swan Song. It's just really good, really compelling, and it's got a lot to offer. Granted, it is long, and I do recommend readers maybe treat this as a duology. So if you're not somebody who just binge reads like me, I don't binge read anymore. It's very rare for me to do that. I think I've done it like 2 to 3 times in the last couple of years. I would read book 1, go read something else, maybe a couple other books in between, then come back and read book 2 and treat it almost like a duology instead of just one solid novel. Because the mass market paperback is 956 pages. That's a lot of paper, and it's a lot of words, but it's still really worth it. I really enjoyed my time with Swan Song, and I do recommend people check this one out. That's all I've really got for today, guys. I hope you're doing well. Till next time, peace out, stay magical, bye. And as always, I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons. Thank you for supporting my passion and my hobby. It means the world to me.